The words pierced into Min Woo's heart like a blazing arrow suspended from a bow. "You're not blind. Your wife is spiking your food." And he stilled, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. The little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with dark skin and braided hair tied with colorful beads, stood beside his table in the restaurant. Her brown eyes were serious, too serious for someone her age. "What did you say?" Min Woo set down his chopsticks, slowly, carefully. Around them, the lunch crowd continued eating, oblivious. His security team sat 2 tables away, watching but not interfering yet. "Your wife, she's putting something in your food. That's why you can't see, right?" The girl crossed her arms. "My grandmother makes medicine. I know what poison smells like." Min Woo's jaw clenched. For 3 months, his vision had been failing. Doctors found nothing wrong. Tests came back clean. They said it was stress, that running his business empire was taking its toll. He'd started seeing specialists, considering surgery. And Myrae, his wife of 2 years, had been so supportive, bringing him special teas, making sure he took his vitamins, cooking his favorite meals personally. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "Michelle. My mom works in your building. Cleaning lady, 4th floor." She pointed at a woman across the restaurant, frantically waving at her to come back. "I saw your wife yesterday. She was in the supply room where they keep the fancy office tea. She didn't see me. I was hiding because I wasn't supposed to be there. She poured something from a little bottle into a tin with your name on it." Min Woo's heart rate picked up, though his face showed nothing. Years of running an organization that operated in shadows had taught him control. "Children have active imaginations." "I'm not making it up," Michelle stamped her foot. "The bottle had a skull on it. Well, not a real skull, a drawing. And she looked around all sneaky-like before she did it. Bad people look like that. Like my uncle before he got arrested." One of his men, Tai Il, started approaching. Min Woo raised a hand slightly, stopping him. "Why tell me?" he asked. "You could get in trouble. Your mother could lose her job." Michelle's expression turned fierce. "Because it's wrong. My grandmother always says, if you see something bad happening and you don't say anything, you're just as bad as the person doing it. And," she looked down, "you gave my mom a bonus last Christmas. She cried happy tears. Said we could finally fix our heater. You're not mean like some of the other bosses she's worked for." Something twisted in Min Woo's chest, an emotion he rarely allowed himself to feel. He'd built his reputation on being untouchable, unreadable. People called him the Ice Prince of the underworld. No one got close. No one mattered enough to betray him, except Myrae had gotten close. He'd let her in, something he swore he'd never do after his family was killed when he was 15. She'd seemed different, kind, genuine, from a good family. Their marriage had been partially arranged by their families, but he'd grown to care for her. Or had that been the plan all along? If this opening grabbed you, just wait. Drop a comment if you're locked in for the full ride. Subscribe because I don't do basic stories. Everything I create has depth, twists, and moments that'll stay with you. Comment what emotion you're feeling strongest right now and where you are watching from. Then keep watching. I promise you, this story earns every second of your attention. Now back to the story. "Michelle," her mother rushed over, grabbing the girl's hand. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Min Woo. She's always wandering off. I'll take her home right now." The woman, Harley, he remembered her name now, looked terrified. Of course she was. In his world, bothering the boss could have consequences. "It's fine," Min Woo said smoothly. She was just being friendly. He reached into his jacket, and Harley flinched slightly. He pulled out his wallet, extracting several bills. For ice cream. She seems like a smart girl. Harley took the money with shaking hands, bowing repeatedly. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." As they left, Michelle looked back at him. Her expression was clear. "I told you the truth. Now what are you going to do about it?" Minwoo returned to his penthouse apartment that evening with his mind racing. The building was one of the most expensive in the city, all glass and steel, with a view of the harbor. Mi-Ray loved it here. She decorated it with expensive art and furniture. She was in the kitchen when he arrived, wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Her long black hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. "You're home early," she said, smiling. That smile had captivated him once. Now he studied it, looking for cracks. "I'm making your favorite, braised short ribs." "Wonderful," he said, keeping his tone warm. "I've been craving them." "Sit, sit. You work too hard." Mi-Ray guided him to the dining table. "How were the meetings today?" "Productive." He watched her move around the kitchen. She'd sent the household staff home early. She often did when she cooked for him personally. He'd thought it was romantic. Now he wondered if it was calculated. She brought out a teapot, the special blend she'd been giving him for his vision problems, the same tea Michelle had mentioned. "Here, this will help your eyes." Mi-Ray poured him a cup. The liquid was dark, aromatic. The herbalist said to drink it twice daily. Minwoo picked up the cup. Steam rose from it, carrying a scent that was off. Now that he was paying attention, really paying attention, he caught something underneath the ginseng and ginger. Something bitter. "Actually, I'm not thirsty right now," he said, setting it down. "I had coffee earlier." A flicker of something crossed Mi-Ray's face. Annoyance? It vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. "But you need it for your eyes," she insisted. "You've been so good about taking it. Don't stop now. I'll drink it with dinner." She pursed her lips, but didn't push further. Instead, she returned to cooking, chatting about her day, about the charity event she was planning, about her sister's upcoming wedding. Minwoo made appropriate responses while his mind worked. If Michelle was right, if Mi-Ray was poisoning him, why? What did she gain? They had a prenuptial agreement, so she wouldn't inherit his empire. Unless she was working with someone else. The organization he ran had enemies, rival groups, people who'd love to see him fall. If Mi-Ray was connected to one of them, if she'd married him as part of a longer game. His vision blurred slightly, and he rubbed his eyes. The symptoms were getting worse. Another week or two, and he might actually go blind. How long had she been doing this? "Are you okay?" Mi-Ray asked, suddenly beside him. Her hand on his shoulder felt like ice. "You look pale." "Just tired," he said. "Maybe I'll skip dinner. I should rest." "No." Her grip tightened. "I mean, you need to eat. You've barely had anything today. Let me bring you something light. Soup, maybe?" The desperation in her voice confirmed everything. Minwoo stood, gently removing her hand. "I appreciate it, but I really need to lie down. Don't wait up for me." He went to the bedroom, locking the door behind him. Then he pulled out his phone and called Tai-il. "I need you to investigate Mi-Ray," he said quietly. Everything. Her family, her friends, her accounts, who she's been meeting with. I want to know what she's been doing every day for the past 6 months. "Boss?" Tai-il sounded confused. "Your wife?" "Just do it. And send someone to retrieve a tea tin from my office. 4th floor supply room. I need it tested for poison. Be discreet." There was a pause. "Understood." Minwoo ended the call and sat on the edge of the bed. His hands were steady. They were always steady. But inside, something was breaking apart. He'd let her in, trusted her, let himself imagine a different life, one where he could have a family, normalcy, where he wasn't always looking over his shoulder. What a fool he'd been. The next morning, Minwoo pretended everything was normal. He drank the tea Mi-Ray served him, or rather, he pretended to drink it, palming the cup and pouring it into a plant when she wasn't looking. He ate the breakfast she made, taking small bites and pushing food around his plate. I have meetings all day, he told her. Don't expect me for dinner. Again? Miray's smile was strained. You've been gone so much lately. Business, he said simply. You know how it is. At the office, Tae-il was waiting with preliminary results. They went to Minwoo's private office, a space with bulletproof windows and walls designed to block surveillance. The tea tested positive for several compounds, Tae-il said, his expression grim. Small doses of things that accumulate over time. They cause vision problems, weakness, confusion. Long-term exposure could cause permanent damage or death. Minwoo's fists clenched on his desk. And Miray's background? Still digging. But we found some connections. Her older brother has gambling debts, significant ones, to the Cheong-ho Group. The Cheong-ho Group, his biggest rivals. They'd been trying to move in on his territory for years. Her brother owes them money, Minwoo said slowly, piecing it together. So they offered him a deal. Have his sister marry me, get close, and eliminate me from the inside. They clear his debts, probably pay him extra. That's our theory, Tae-il confirmed. We're trying to confirm it now. Minwoo stood, walking to the window. The city spread out below him, gleaming in the morning sun. He'd built his empire carefully, methodically. He'd survived assassination attempts, betrayals, wars with other organizations. And he'd almost been taken down by someone he'd shared a bed with. Boss, Tae-il said carefully. What do you want to do? Good question. In his world, betrayal had one answer. People who crossed him disappeared. It was expected. Required, even, to maintain respect and control. But Miray was his wife. Killing her would raise questions, draw attention. And some part of him, the part that had allowed himself to care, hesitated. I need more proof, Minwoo said finally. Solid evidence of her connection to Cheong-ho. And I want to know who else is involved. If we move too quickly, we might miss other players. Understood. After Tae-il left, Minwoo pulled out his phone. He scrolled through contacts until he found one he hadn't called in months. His younger cousin, Yeon-soo, who ran a legitimate pharmaceutical company. I need a favor, he said when she answered. Can you create an antidote for a poison? I'll send you the compound information. Minwoo, Yeon-soo sounded worried. What's going on? Just help me, please. She sighed. Send me what you have. That evening, Minwoo went to find the person who'd started all this. Michelle. The apartment building where Harley and her daughter lived was in a completely different world from his penthouse. The elevator was broken, so he climbed 4 flights of stairs. The hallways smelled like cooking spices and old carpet. When Harley opened the door and saw him, she nearly fainted. Mr. Minwoo, What? Is something wrong? She looked panicked, probably thinking Michelle had gotten her fired somehow. I need to speak with your daughter, he said. May I come in? The apartment was tiny but clean, decorated with bright fabrics and photos. Michelle sat at a small table doing homework, but she jumped up when she saw him. I knew you'd believe me, she said triumphantly. Michelle. Harley looked horrified. Minwoo raised a hand. It's all right. She was telling the truth. I'm not here to cause problems. I actually wanted to thank her properly. He set a bag on the table. Inside were groceries, some money, and a small gift, a science kit he'd had his assistant purchase. For being brave enough to speak up. Michelle's eyes went wide. Is this really for me? Really? Are you going to be okay? She asked seriously. Did you stop drinking the poison? I'm working on it, he assured her. Then, crouching to her level. Michelle, that was very dangerous, what you did. Telling me about my wife. In my world, people don't like it when secrets are revealed. You could have been hurt. I know, she said quietly. But Grandma says you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's scary. Your grandmother sounds wise. He stood. Where is she? I'd like to meet her. She's back in our home country, Harley said, relaxing slightly now that she understood he wasn't angry. She couldn't come with us when we moved here, but she taught Michelle everything she knows about plants and medicine. I can identify 37 different poisonous plants, Michelle said proudly, and 28 healing ones. Despite everything, Minwoo smiled, a real smile, something that felt foreign on his face. That's quite impressive. As he left their apartment, something occurred to him. Michelle had saved his life, yes, but she'd also reminded him of something he'd forgotten, that there were still good people in the world, people who did the right thing even when it cost them something. He'd spent so long in the darkness that he'd forgotten what light looked like. Over the next 3 days, Minwoo played a dangerous game. He continued pretending to take Mi-Ray's poison while secretly receiving treatment from Yeon-Soo. His vision started improving, but he hid it, continuing to squint and stumble occasionally. Meanwhile, Tae-il gathered evidence. Bank transfers, recorded phone calls, photos of Mi-Ray meeting with known Cheong-ho members. The picture became clear. Mi-Ray had been planted 2 years ago. The entire relationship had been orchestrated. Her family's connections to his family, fabricated. Her personality, her interests, everything she'd shown him, a lie. The plan was to slowly poison him until he was completely blind and weak, then have him killed in a way that looked like natural causes or an accident. Mi-Ray would play the grieving widow, and the Cheong-ho group would move in on his territory during the chaos. It was actually a good plan. If not for an 8-year-old girl with a sharp nose and a conscience, it would have worked. On the 4th day, Minwoo called a meeting with his top people, not at the office, somewhere more private, an old warehouse he owned by the docks. "We're moving against Cheong-ho," he announced. "Full offensive. I want every piece of leverage we have activated, every debt called in, every weakness exploited." His lieutenants looked shocked. They'd maintained an uneasy peace with Cheong-ho for years. "Boss, what changed?" one asked. "They tried to kill me," Minwoo said simply. "That requires a response." He didn't mention Mi-Ray. Not yet. That was personal, and he'd handle it personally. Mi-Ray noticed something was wrong on the 5th day. Minwoo came home to find her pacing in the living room, phone pressed to her ear. She ended the call quickly when she saw him. "Is everything all right?" he asked mildly. "Fine. Just wedding planning with my sister." But her hands shook slightly. "How are you feeling? Your eyes?" "Actually worse," he lied. "I've been thinking about that surgery the doctors mentioned. Maybe it's time." Relief flooded her face. "Really? That's wonderful. When?" "Soon. I'll schedule it this week." That night, he heard her on the phone in the bathroom. The walls were thick, but he'd had surveillance installed 2 days ago. Her voice came through clearly on his earpiece. "Getting suspicious. We need to move the timeline up. I don't know. Maybe the surgery. We could arrange an accident during the procedure." "Yes, I understand the stakes." Minwoo lay in bed, listening to his wife plot his death, and felt nothing. The part of him that had cared for her was gone, burned away by her betrayal. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow, this ends. The morning arrived cold and gray, with rain threatening. Minwoo dressed in his usual black suit, but today he added something extra, a recording device in his jacket pocket and a small weapon at his ankle. Not that he expected to need it. Not here. Mi-Ray was still asleep when he left. He'd told her he had an early meeting. Truth was, he had several meetings lined up that would reshape everything. First stop, a coffee shop in the University District, far from his usual territory. Michelle and Harley were already there when he arrived, looking nervous and out of place among the college students. "Thank you for coming," Minwoo said, sliding into the booth across from them. "You said it was important," Harley replied, her arm protectively around her daughter. He looked at Michelle. "What you told me was true. All of it. Because of you, I'm going to be okay. But now things are going to get complicated, and I wanted to make sure you both stay safe." He pushed an envelope across the table. There's enough money in there for you to take a vacation. Maybe visit your family back home for a few weeks, just until everything settles. Harley opened the envelope, gasped at the amount. Mr. Minwoo, this is too much. It's not. He turned to Michelle. The people my wife works for, they're not good people. If they find out you're the one who noticed what she was doing, they might try to hurt you. I can't let that happen. Michelle's eyes went wide. Are you going to fight them? In a way, like in the movies, with car chases and— Michelle! Harley looked mortified, but Minwoo almost smiled. Not quite like the movies, more like a chess game, moving pieces, making strategic plays. The best fights are won without anyone throwing a single punch. That sounds boring, Michelle said, then seemed to reconsider. But I guess smarter. Much smarter. He stood. There's contact information in the envelope. If anything happens, anything at all that makes you feel unsafe, call that number immediately. Someone will help you. Harley stood too, bowing deeply. Thank you. For everything. I don't understand all of what's happening, but thank you for being honorable. The word struck him oddly. Honorable. In his line of work, honor was complicated. He'd done things that would horrify most people. But maybe, in this one thing, he could do the right thing. After they left, Minwoo sat alone for a moment, watching rain start to fall outside. Then his phone rang. Tai-il. We have a problem, his second-in-command said. Cheong-ho knows we're investigating. They've moved up their timeline. We intercepted a message. They're planning something for tonight. What kind of something? They're going to stage an attack on you. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Mai-Ray will be out at her sister's place. Perfect alibi. Minwoo's mind raced. Where? Your penthouse. They've bribed 2 of the security guards in your building. Of course. Mi-Ray would have made sure certain people were in place. He'd been so careful about his organization, but he'd let his guard down at home. Change of plans, Minwoo said. I'm not going to the penthouse tonight. Find me somewhere safe. And Tai-il? Get our lawyer on the phone. We're going to need documentation ready. All the evidence we've gathered, prepared for multiple purposes. Boss, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to stop playing defense. By noon, Minwoo had moved to a secure location, a high-rise apartment owned under a false name. From here, he made his calls, moved his pieces. First to his cousin Yeon-soo. I need you to go public with those test results. The poison in the tea. Make it official, documented. Contact the authorities. Minwoo, that will expose everything. I know. Do it anyway. Second to his lawyer. File for divorce, immediately. And I want Mi-Ray's assets frozen. All of them. Third, onto to his financial advisor. Move everything. Every account she has access to. Change the passwords. Every shared investment. Separate them. I want her cut off by end of business today. And finally, to Tai-il. Let Cheong-ho's attack happen, but make sure the penthouse is empty. I want them to commit fully, to show their hand. Then we'll have them. That's risky, boss. Everything's risky. But I'm tired of reacting. Time to control the board. He ended the calls and stood at the window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there, Mi-Ray was going about her day, thinking she was in control, thinking her plan was working. She had no idea the ground was already crumbling beneath her feet. Mi-Ray called him at 3 in the afternoon, her voice honey-sweet. Where are you? I tried the office, but they said you weren't there. Meeting's outside the office, Minwoo replied, keeping his tone normal. I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up. Again? You've been gone so much lately. A pause. Are you feeling all right? Your eyes? Getting worse, actually. I'm thinking about that surgery more seriously. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But yes, maybe surgery is best. I'll support whatever you decide. Lies. All lies. He could hear it now. The falseness beneath her caring tone. How had he ever believed it? "I'll see you later," he said and hung up. At 5, his lawyer called back. "Divorce papers filed. She's been served at your penthouse. And Minwoo. She did not take it well." "I imagine not." At 6, his financial advisor confirmed all shared assets had been separated and secured. Ray's personal accounts, the ones fed by regular transfers from him, were frozen pending the divorce proceedings. At 7, Yeon-soo sent him a message. "Authorities have the poison documentation. They're opening an investigation. I'm sorry, cousin. I know this must hurt." It should hurt, he thought. But mostly he felt empty, hollow where trust used to be. At 8, Tae-il called. "They're moving. 3 men, heavily armed, entering your building now. The corrupted guards let them through. They're heading to your floor." Minwoo pulled up the security feed on his laptop. He'd had cameras installed throughout his penthouse weeks ago, a precaution he took everywhere, though Ray hadn't known. Now he watched as 3 figures in black entered his home, weapons drawn. They moved through the rooms efficiently, professionally, looking for him. When they realized the place was empty, there was confusion. One made a phone call. Minwoo couldn't hear the conversation, but he could imagine it. Where is he? He's supposed to be here. The response must have been interesting, because the man's body language changed, became agitated. They argued among themselves, then began looking through the penthouse more carefully. That's when they found it, the evidence Minwoo had left for them. Files spread across his desk. Bank statements showing payments from Cheong-ho to Mi-rae's brother. Photos of Mi-rae meeting with Cheong-ho leaders. A USB drive containing recorded phone calls. One of the intruders grabbed the USB drive. They debated, then took photos of everything with their phones, and fled. Perfect. "Are you tracking them?" Minwoo asked Tae-il. "Every step. They're heading to the East District, Cheong-ho territory." "Good. Let them report back. Let Cheong-ho know we have everything. Then send them a message. I'm willing to talk. Neutral ground tomorrow night." "Boss, I know what it is. Set it up." Mi-rae showed up at the secure apartment at 10 that night. Somehow she'd figured out where he was, probably bribed someone in his organization. Security called up to warn him, and he told them to let her up. She burst through the door, makeup smeared, hair disheveled. "What are you doing? Divorce papers? Freezing my accounts? Have you lost your mind?" Minwoo sat calmly in an armchair, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "I'd offer you tea, but I'm afraid I don't trust it anymore." She froze. "What?" "The tea you've been giving me, for my eyes. Turns out it was full of poison. Funny how that works." The color drained from her face. You're being paranoid. The stress is getting to you. I have documentation, Mi-rae. Lab results, recordings of your phone calls, photos of you with Cheong-ho leadership, bank transfers, all of it." He set down his glass. "The only question now is what happens next." She stood there, trembling. Then suddenly, the mask dropped. Her expression went cold, calculating. "How did you find out? Does it matter?" "I suppose not." She laughed bitterly. "You know, I almost felt bad about it. You weren't terrible as husbands go. A little distant. Too focused on business, but not cruel. But business is business, right? You, of all people, should understand that." "Business," he repeated. "Is that what you call attempted murder? Please, you've ordered worse things done to your enemies. Don't play innocent with me." She moved further into the room. "So what now? You kill me? Make me disappear like you do with everyone who crosses you?" Minwoo studied her. "That's what you expect, isn't it? What you do in my position. It's what anyone in your position would do. Maybe." He stood. "But here's the thing, Mi-rae. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not even going to hurt you." She looked suspicious. "Why not?" "Because that little girl who warned me about you, she reminded me of something. There are rules, lines you don't cross. And killing my wife, even a wife who betrayed me, That crosses a line I'm not willing to cross." "How noble," she sneered. "So what? You're just going to let me go?" "No, you're going to prison. The authorities have all the evidence of the poisoning. You'll be arrested, probably tomorrow, and you're going to testify against Cheong-ho. Full cooperation. Every detail of their organization you know." "I'll never—" "You will. Because if you don't, I'll make sure your entire family goes down with you. Your brother, your parents, everyone. But if you cooperate, I'll make sure only you and your brother face consequences. Your parents can live quietly, unbothered. Your sister can have her wedding. Life goes on for them." Mirei's face twisted with rage. "You choose," Minwoo said simply. "Save your family, or let them all burn. You have until morning." She stared at him with pure hatred, then turned and left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Minwoo returned to his chair, picking up his whiskey. His hand shook slightly, the only outward sign of emotion he allowed himself. She was right, in a way. He had done terrible things, ordered actions that haunted him when he let himself think about them. But this, at least, he could do right. The next morning, Mirei turned herself into the authorities with her lawyer. By afternoon, she'd signed a cooperation agreement. The news spread through the criminal underworld like wildfire. Minwoo's wife had tried to poison him, been caught, and was now testifying against Cheong-ho. The meeting he'd requested with Cheong-ho's leadership that evening suddenly became much more important. The Neutral Ground was an old restaurant that had been closed for renovations, owned by a third party with no allegiance to either organization. Minwoo arrived with only Tai-il, a show of confidence. Cheong-ho brought their leader, a man named Dong-gun, and his top lieutenant. They sat across from each other at a table in the empty dining room, tension thick enough to cut. "You've made quite a mess," Dong-gun said. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and cold eyes. "My organization is facing serious scrutiny because of your wife's testimony." "Your organization tried to kill me," Minwoo replied calmly. "You planted someone in my life, poisoned me for months. What did you expect? That I'd just die quietly? It was business, territory. You control too much. We simply wanted to rebalance things. By murdering me." Dong-gun shrugged. "Would you have negotiated otherwise? Shared territory? Power? Men like you don't share." He had a point. Minwoo had built his empire by being ruthless, uncompromising, and the idea of willingly giving up control would have seemed impossible a week ago. But things had changed. He'd almost died, because he couldn't see the threat right beside him, because he'd been so focused on external enemies that he'd ignored the danger within. "What if I did?" Minwoo asked. "What if I was willing to negotiate now?" Dong-gun's eyebrows rose. "I'm listening." "You wanted more territory. Fine. I'll cede the southern docks to you. Full control, no interference. In exchange, you back off everything else. We establish clear boundaries, stay out of each other's business." "That's generous." "Suspiciously so." "I'm tired," Minwoo admitted. "I've been running this organization since I was 19 years old. 11 years of constantly watching my back, fighting wars, building an empire. And for what? What, so I can keep fighting forever?" It was the truth, though not all of it. The real truth was that Michelle's simple act of bravery had shown him something. He was becoming the kind of person children needed to be protected from. The kind of person he'd promised himself he'd never become when his own family was killed. "You're thinking of getting out," Dong-gun said slowly. "Retiring. Eventually. Not today. Not tomorrow. But yes. And when I do, I don't want to leave a war behind. I want stability, clear succession. Peace, however temporary." The Cheong-ho leader sat back, considering. "If I agree to this, I need guarantees. Your wife's testimony could destroy my organization. She knows too much." "Her testimony focuses on the attempt on my life and the people directly involved in that plot," Minwoo said. "Specifically, your Lieutenant Kim Sung-ho and enforcer Park Woo-jin, the two who recruited her brother and managed the operation. She doesn't mention broader organizational structure. Doesn't implicate you directly. How convenient. It's strategic. I want those two people held accountable for coming after me personally. But I'm not trying to destroy your entire organization. That would just create chaos, and someone worse might fill the vacuum. Donggun drummed his fingers on the table. The southern docks are valuable, but not as valuable as the peace you're offering. I accept your terms. They shook hands, sealing an agreement that would reshape the city's criminal landscape. As Min-woo left the restaurant, Tae-il looked troubled. Boss, are you really thinking about getting out? Would that be so bad? You've built everything we have. Without you. Without me, you'd all be fine. Better, maybe. You could run things legitimately, clean up the business. I know you've been taking online courses in business management. Don't think I haven't noticed. Tae-il flushed. I just wanted to be more useful. You are useful. You're smart, loyal, capable. You'd make a better leader than I ever was. You'd actually have a conscience about it. They drove in silence for a while. Then Tae-il asked, What changed? What made you start thinking this way? Min-woo thought of Michelle, standing in that restaurant, so small, but so brave. Someone reminded me what real courage looks like, and it's not this, not building an empire on fear and violence. It's doing the right thing even when it's scary, even when it costs you something. A 8-year-old taught you that? The best teachers often come in unexpected forms. The trial proceedings for Myrae moved quickly. With her full cooperation and the physical evidence, the prosecution had an airtight case. She pled guilty to attempted murder and received a 10-year sentence. Her brother got 12 years for conspiracy. True to his word, Min-woo ensured her parents and sister were left alone. The wedding went forward, though quietly. He even sent a gift, anonymously, because he wasn't completely heartless. Cheong-ho's lieutenants Kim Sung-ho and Park Woo-jin were arrested and convicted. The organization took a hit but survived, and the agreement with Donggun held. The southern docks changed hands peacefully. It's something almost unheard of in their world. Through it all, Min-woo found himself thinking about his future. For the first time in years, he actually had a future to think about. He wasn't dying, wasn't fighting a war on all fronts, wasn't consumed by the need to expand, to conquer, to survive. One day, about a month after everything settled, he went back to that apartment building with the broken elevator. Climbed those 4 flights of stairs again. Harley answered the door, surprised, but smiling now. Mr. Min-woo, come in, please. Michelle ran up to him immediately. Did you win? Against the bad guys? I did. Thanks to you. Are you better? Can you see okay now? Perfectly clear. See? He made a show of looking around the room, noting details. You got new curtains, yellow ones. And there's a drawing on the refrigerator. Looks like a garden. That's my project for school, Michelle said proudly. We're learning about medicinal plants. I'm doing the best in the class because Grandma taught me so much. An idea struck him. Michelle, what do you want to be when you grow up? She thought about it seriously. A doctor, or maybe a scientist, someone who helps people feel better. That's a wonderful goal. He looked at Harley. What if I told you I know people at the university? People who run scholarship programs for talented students, especially those interested in medicine and science? Harley's eyes went wide. Mr. Min-woo, we couldn't possibly. Yes, you could. Michelle saved my life. She did it because it was right, expecting nothing in return. That kind of person, someone with that kind of integrity and that kind of knowledge, should become a doctor. The world needs more people like her in medicine. But she's only 8, Harley protested weakly. Then we start preparing now. Good schools, the right programs. When the time comes for university, the path will already be laid out. He pulled out a card. This is my personal lawyer. Call him. He'll set everything up. A trust fund for Michelle's education, all expenses covered. Elementary through medical school if that's what she wants. Michelle looked between him and her mother, not quite understanding the magnitude, but sensing something important was happening. Harley's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do this for us? Because your daughter reminded me that there's still good in the world, that not everyone acts out of self-interest, and because... He paused, searching for words. Because I've spent my life building things that will crumble eventually. But investing in someone like Michelle? That's building something that will last. Something that matters. He crouched down to Michelle's level again. Study hard. Listen to your teachers and your grandmother. Learn everything you can about helping people. And when you're older, when you're Dr. Michelle saving lives in some hospital, remember that it started because you were brave enough to speak up when you saw something wrong. Michelle nodded solemnly. I promise. As Min-woo left the apartment building, stepping out into afternoon sunlight, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not for himself, necessarily, but for the future. For the possibility that good people could still make a difference. His phone rang. Tae-il. Boss, we have a situation. The Jong Group is making moves in the East. They might be trying to take advantage of our recent reorganization. Part of Min-woo wanted to sigh, to feel the weight of it all pressing down again. But instead, he found himself smiling slightly. Handle it, he told Tae-il. You know what to do. Use negotiation first. Force only if absolutely necessary. I trust your judgment. Really? You're delegating this? Really? You've got this. He ended the call and started walking, no particular destination in mind. The city moved around him, people going about their lives, unaware of the hidden battles fought in shadows. Most of them were like Michelle and Harley, just trying to survive, and to build something better for themselves and their families. For so long, he'd seen the world through a lens of power and control. Who had it? Who wanted it? How to keep it? But maybe there were other lenses, other ways of seeing. Maybe there was still time to learn them. 6 months later, Min-woo stood in a very different kind of place, a community center in Michelle's neighborhood. He'd funded the renovation himself, though few people knew that. It now offered after-school programs, job training, health services. He watched Michelle demonstrate plants to other children, explaining which ones were safe and which were dangerous. She was a natural teacher, patient and enthusiastic. She's remarkable, a voice said beside him. He turned to see an older woman, her skin darker than Michelle's, her eyes wise. But you must be the one who helped my daughter and granddaughter. You're Michelle's grandmother. I am. I came to visit for a few months. Harley told me everything. She studied him carefully. You're the man from the restaurant, the one my granddaughter saved. She did save me, in more ways than she knows. The grandmother nodded slowly. When Michelle was very small, I told her that everyone has a purpose. Sometimes we find it early. Sometimes it takes a lifetime. But when we do find it, we must pursue it with everything we have. What's your purpose? Min-woo asked. Teaching, healing, passing on knowledge. She gestured to Michelle. Now, through her, I can reach even further. And you? Have you found yours? He thought about it. For years, his purpose had been survival, then power, then maintaining what he'd built. But now, I think I'm still figuring that out, he admitted. Good. A man who thinks he has all the answers has stopped growing. She patted his arm. My granddaughter sees the good in people. She saw it in you, when you didn't even see it in yourself. Don't prove her wrong. I'll try not to. She smiled and walked away to join her granddaughter. Min-woo stayed a moment longer, watching them together. 3 generations, grandmother, mother, daughter, all strong in different ways. His own family was gone, destroyed by violence when he was barely older than Michelle. He'd thought that meant he had to walk alone, trust no one, rely only on his own strength. But maybe family wasn't just blood. Maybe it was the connections you chose to build, the people you decided to invest in, the good you put into the world. His phone buzzed, another situation requiring attention. But this time, when he looked at it, he didn't feel the same urgency. Didn't feel like everything would fall apart without his direct involvement. He'd been building something new these past months, a transition plan, moving legitimate businesses out from under the criminal enterprises, setting up proper leadership structures, preparing for the day when he could step back completely. It would take time, maybe years, but he had time now. Time he wouldn't have had if not for a brave little girl who spoke up when it mattered most. A year passed, like water through fingers. Minwoo's transformation wasn't dramatic. No sudden revelation, no complete abandonment of his old life. Instead, it was gradual, like winter slowly giving way to spring. He still ran his organization, but differently now. To more board meetings than back alley confrontations, more negotiations than threats. Tae-il had stepped up beautifully, handling day-to-day operations with a steady hand, while Minwoo focused on the longer game, legitimizing what could be legitimized, carefully dismantling what couldn't. The community center had been just the beginning. He'd quietly funded 3 more in different neighborhoods, all under shell corporations that couldn't be traced back to him. A scholarship program, a free health clinic. Small acts of restitution for a city he'd taken so much from. Michelle flourished. She'd moved to a better school, one that challenged her brilliant mind. Every few weeks, Minwoo would receive updates from Harley, photos of awards, report cards full of top marks, stories about Michelle tutoring other children in science, and he kept the photos in a locked drawer in his desk, something private and precious. One spring evening, Tae-il knocked on his office door with an unusual expression, somewhere between amused and concerned. "Boss, you have a visitor. She's insistent." "Who?" "See for yourself." Michelle marched into his office like she owned it, now 8 years old, and somehow even more confident than before. She wore her school uniform and carried a backpack covered in science-themed pins. "We need to talk," she announced. Minwoo dismissed Tae-il with a nod and gestured for Michelle to sit. "What's this about?" "My class is doing a project about careers. We're supposed to interview someone and learn about their job." She pulled out a notebook and pencil. "So I picked you." "Michelle, I don't think." "I know you can't tell me everything," she interrupted. "Mom explained that your work is complicated and private. But you must do something that's okay to talk about, right? Everyone has some part of their job that's normal." She had him there. He did run several legitimate businesses now. Import/export companies, real estate holdings, investment firms. "What do you want to know?" he asked cautiously. "How do you make decisions? Like when something is really important and could go really wrong, how do you choose what to do?" Interesting question. "Well, I gather all the information I can. Look at it from different angles. Consider who will be affected by each choice. And then I choose the option that does the least harm while accomplishing what needs to be done." Michelle wrote this down carefully. "What about when all the options cause harm? What do you do then?" He leaned back in his chair. "That's the hardest part of any leadership position. Sometimes there are no good choices, only less bad ones. In those moments, you have to be honest with yourself about the cost and be willing to live with the consequences. Have you ever made a choice you regretted? Many times. Did you fix them? When I could. Some things can't be fixed, only learned from." She studied him with those 2 wise eyes. "Mom says you're a good man who's made bad choices. Grandma says everyone has light and darkness inside them, and we choose every day which one to feed. Which one are you feeding now?" The question hit him harder than any threat he'd faced in years. "I'm trying to feed the light. It's harder than feeding the darkness. But I'm trying." Michelle nodded, satisfied. Okay, that's good. She flipped to a new page. Now, tell me about your import business. Do you ever import medicinal plants? He found himself actually relaxing into the conversation, explaining the legitimate aspects of his companies. Michelle asked smart questions, making connections he wouldn't expect from someone her age. After an hour, she packed up her notebook. Thank you. This will be a great presentation. Michelle, he said as she headed for the door. Why did you really come here? You could have interviewed your mother, a teacher, anyone else. She turned back, suddenly looking very young, despite her precocious nature. Because you're important to me. You helped us when you didn't have to. And I wanted to understand you better. Mom and Grandma say, understanding people makes you less afraid of them and more able to help them. Are you afraid of me? Sometimes, she admitted. When I think about the things you might have done. But then I remember that you protected us, that you listened when I warned you, that you're trying to be better. And I think people should have a chance to change if they want to. Don't you? After she left, Minwoo sat alone in his office for a long time. Through the window, the city glittered in the gathering dusk. His city. The one he'd fought for, bled for, built an empire in. But it was also Michelle's city, Harley's city, full of ordinary people trying to live ordinary lives. And wasn't that worth protecting too? Not through fear and control, but through actually making things better? His phone rang. Yan Su, his cousin. When I need advice, she said without preamble. The pharmaceutical company has an opportunity to expand into some questionable markets. High profit margins, but the ethics are murky. What would you do? A year ago, he would have said, take the profit. Money was money. Power was power. Now he said, what does your conscience tell you? That it's wrong, but the board is pushing for it. Then find another way to expand. Build something you can be proud of, not just something profitable. Trust me on this. The things you're proud of last longer than the things that just make money. There was a pause. When did you become so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just finally paying attention to people who are. The challenges didn't stop. 2 months later, a rival organization made a play for some of his territory. They were young, aggressive, so hungry. Everything he'd been at their age. The old Minwoo would have crushed them immediately, sent a message written in blood. Instead, he called a meeting. The rival leader, a woman named Seo Yun, who couldn't be older than 25, arrived expecting a fight. She brought her whole crew, all of them armed and tense. Minwoo came alone. This is either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, Seo Yun said, eyeing him warily. Maybe both. He gestured to the chairs he'd set up. Sit. Let's talk business. Talk. You're the Ice Prince. You don't talk. You destroy. People change. Sit. Grudgingly, they sat. Her crew flanked her, hands near weapons. Minwoo poured tea calmly. You want the warehouse district? He said. The shipping routes connected to it. I can see why. They're valuable. But you've gone about it the wrong way. I'm trying to take it by force. Because you'd never give it up willingly. True, a year ago I wouldn't have. But here's what I'm proposing. A partnership. You handle the shipping logistics. I provide the infrastructure and political connections. We split profits 60-40. Seo Yun laughed. That's ridiculous. Why would you offer that? Because I'm tired of fighting, and because you remind me of myself at your age. Smart, determined, willing to risk everything. But I also see where that path leads. Years of looking over your shoulder. Never trusting anyone. Building something that ultimately hollows you out inside. He leaned forward. I'm offering you a different path. Work with me. Learn the business properly. In 5 years, when I'm ready to step back completely, you'll be positioned to take over major operations. Legitimately, and with proper structures and protection. And if I refuse, If I keep pushing, then we fight, and one of us loses everything. Maybe both of us. The question is whether that's really what you want, or whether you're just doing what you think you're supposed to do in this world. Seo Yun studied him for a long moment. People say you've gone soft. Let them say it. I know what strength actually looks like now, and it's not what I thought it was. She glanced at her crew, then back at him. 60-40 is insulting. 55-45. Done. They shook hands, and just like that, another war was prevented. Another piece of his empire shifted towards something more sustainable. As Seo Yun's group left, her second-in-command muttered something about not trusting him. She replied, loud enough for Minwoo to hear. He didn't have to offer us anything. He could have destroyed us. That means something. That summer, Michelle's school organized a career fair. Students had created presentations about different professions, and families were invited to attend. Minwoo almost didn't go. He'd never been to anything like this, a normal, wholesome school event. It felt alien to his world. But Harley had invited him personally, and Michelle had added a hand-drawn invitation with surprisingly good artwork of medicinal plants. So he went, wearing a simple suit instead of his usual dark, intimidating attire. The school gymnasium was decorated with colorful posters. Children ran around excitedly while parents chatted and took photos. Minwoo felt completely out of place. Then he saw Michelle's presentation. She'd created a detailed poster about careers in medicine, featuring interviews with a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, and him, listed as businessman and community leader. You came. Michelle spotted him and grabbed his hand, pulling him toward her display. I want to show you something. She'd included a small section about how business leaders could help communities. Photos of the community centers he'd funded, though she didn't know he was behind them. Statistics about how job training programs reduced poverty. This is what I want to do, she explained. Be a doctor, but also help make sure everyone can get medical care. Grandma says healing isn't just about medicine, it's about making the world more fair. Your grandmother is a wise woman. She wants to meet you properly. She says anyone who helps family deserves respect. Michelle lowered her voice conspiratorially. I think she wants to make sure you're not secretly evil. Despite himself, Minwoo smiled. And what will you tell her? That you're trying. That's all anyone can do, right? Try to be better than yesterday. Simple words from a child, but they carried weight he felt in his bones. Later, he met Michelle's grandmother officially. She was smaller than he expected, her hands marked with age and work, her eyes sharp and measuring. So you're the Ice Prince, she said in accented Korean. I was. I'm not sure what I am now. My granddaughter believes in you. Children are good judges of character. They haven't learned to lie to themselves yet. She took his hand, examining it. These are hands that have done hard things, but they're also hands that have helped. Both can be true. I'm trying to make sure the second truth outweighs the first. Good, because that child, she nodded toward Michelle, who was explaining her poster to other students. She sees you as proof that people can change. Don't take that responsibility lightly. I don't. She released his hand. Then we understand each other. Come for dinner next week. Harley's cooking, and I'll make my traditional remedies. We'll see if your taste buds are as refined as Michelle claims. It was less an invitation than a command. Minwoo found himself accepting before he'd fully thought it through. As he left the school that evening, he passed groups of normal families doing normal things, parents helping kids with projects, friends chatting about weekend plans, children being children. For most of his life, he'd been separate from this world. Above it, he'd told himself. Too focused on survival and power to bother with such ordinary concerns. Now he wondered what he'd been missing, what he'd sacrificed for an empire that would ultimately crumble like all empires do. His phone buzzed. Business crisis, as always. But this time, he looked at it, and made a decision. He called Tae-il. "Handle it. Use your best judgment. I trust you." "Where are you going?" "Home. And tomorrow, I'm taking the day off." Silence on the other end. In 11 years, Minwoo had never taken a day off. "Boss, are you feeling okay?" "Better than I have in a long time, actually. Good night, Tae-il." He went home to his new apartment, smaller than the penthouse, in a quieter neighborhood. No memories of Mireille here, no ghosts of betrayal. Just clean, simple space where he could think. That night, he slept better than he had in years. The dinner at Michelle's apartment became a weekly tradition, though Minwoo couldn't quite figure out how it happened. One invitation turned into another, then another, until it was simply understood that Thursday evenings were for family dinner. Family. The word still felt strange applied to them, but that's what it was becoming. Michelle's grandmother, who insisted he call her Grandmother Mallory like everyone else, was a force of nature. She told stories about her homeland, about plants that could heal or harm, about the importance of knowing yourself before trying to help others. "You can't pour from an empty cup," she said one evening, ladling stew into bowls. "All these years, you've been running empty, on pouring out violence and control because you had nothing else to give. Now you're learning to fill yourself with better things." "How do you know so much about me?" Minwoo asked. "Michelle tells me things. Harley tells me things. And I have eyes. I can see the shadows you carry." She sat down, fixing him with that penetrating gaze. "But I also see you're fighting those shadows. That takes more strength than living in them." These dinners became a refuge. Here, he wasn't the ice prince or a crime lord or a powerful businessman. He was just Minwoo, listening to Michelle chatter about school, helping Harley with dishes, learning Grandmother Mallory's stories. It was during one of these dinners, about 3 months after they started, that everything shifted. Michelle had been quieter than usual, pushing food around her plate. Finally, and she looked up at Minwoo. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Do you have family? Like, real family? Parents or siblings or anyone?" Harley tensed. "Michelle, that's not—" "It's all right," Minwoo interrupted. He set down his chopsticks. "I had a family once. My parents and a younger sister. They died when I was 15. "How?" Michelle asked softly. "They were killed. By people in a world similar to the one I ended up in." He'd never talked about this with anyone outside his organization, but something about this small kitchen, these kind people, made the words come easier. "My father worked for a powerful man. There was a betrayal, a power struggle. My family got caught in the middle. What happened to the people who did it? They're gone now, one way or another." He didn't elaborate on his role in that, so Michelle was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is that why you do what you do? Because they died?" "Partly. I thought if I became powerful enough, untouchable enough, I could make sure I'd never be helpless like that again. That no one could ever hurt me the way they hurt my family." "But your wife still hurt you," Michelle pointed out with a child's blunt honesty. "Yes. Turns out you can't make yourself completely invulnerable. The harder you try, the more you lose what makes life worth living." Grandmother Mallory nodded approvingly. "Now you're learning. Power doesn't protect you from pain. It just isolates you from the things that make pain bearable. Connection, love, purpose beyond yourself." "My sister would have been about your age now," Minwoo said, looking at Michelle. "If she'd lived. I think she would have been a lot like you. Smart, brave, always asking difficult questions." Michelle's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really. Her name was Haiwan. It means graceful and beautiful." "That's pretty." Michelle thought for a moment. "I'm sorry she died, but I'm glad you told me about her. It's good to remember people we love, even when it hurts." Such wisdom from someone so young. Minwoo felt something crack open in his chest, some wall he'd maintained for 15 years. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for listening." After dinner, while helping clean up, Harley spoke to him in a low voice. "You didn't have to share that. I know it must have been difficult." "I wanted to. Your family. You've given me something I didn't know I needed." "Which is?" "A reason to be better. Not just for myself, but for people who deserve better from the world." Harley smiled. "You're already better than you think you are." But transformation was never simple or linear. 2 weeks later, Minwoo faced a test that threatened everything he'd been building. One of his oldest lieutenants, a man named Quan, who'd been with him since the beginning, came to him with a problem. A rival group had kidnapped Quan's teenage son, demanding territory and money for his return. "I know the rules," Quan said, his voice tight with fear. "I know we don't negotiate with kidnappers, but boss, he's my son, my only child." The old Minwoo would have had a clear answer: pursue the kidnappers, eliminate them, retrieve the boy. Violence. Meeting. Violence. It was the language their world understood. But that approach had costs. The boy might get hurt in the crossfire. More violence would spark retaliation, maybe pull in other groups. The cycle would continue. "Give me time," Minwoo said. "Don't do anything yet." He spent the next 6 hours working every angle he had, called in favors, worked connections, gathered intelligence. The kidnappers were a small group, desperate and stupid. They'd taken the son of one of his men without fully understanding the consequences. Finally, he found leverage. The kidnappers' leader had family in a neighborhood Minwoo's organization protected. Not criminals, just ordinary people trying to live their lives. The old move would be threatening those innocent people. Hostages for hostages. Instead, Minwoo had those people moved to safety without them knowing why. Then he called the kidnapper directly. "I know where your family is," he said calmly. "But I'm not going to hurt them. I've actually ensured they're safe. But I want you to understand something. If you're willing to use family as leverage, you've opened a door that goes both ways. The difference is, I have more resources and more reach than you do." "Are you threatening?" "I'm explaining reality. You took Quan's son thinking we'd pay or give up territory. But here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to release the boy, unharmed. In return, I'll forget this happened. You walk away, stay out of my territory, and we're done. And if I refuse, then I stop being reasonable. And when I stop being reasonable, people tend to disappear. Not their families. I don't hurt innocents. But you, your crew, different story." There was silence. Then, "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "Because, unlike you, I actually have honor. Don't ask around about me. When I make a deal, I keep it. Always." 2 hours later, Quan's son was released, shaken but unharmed. The kidnappers scattered, leaving the city entirely. Quan came to Minwoo's office, his son safely home. "How did you do it without bloodshed?" "By being smarter than them, and by being willing to show mercy when they expected violence." Minwoo leaned back in his chair. "Your son is safe. That's what matters. But Quan, this is why I'm trying to move us toward legitimate business. This world we're in, it puts everyone we care about at risk. Your son today, someone else's family tomorrow. It never ends, unless we end it." Quan nodded slowly. "I'm with you, boss. Whatever direction you want to take us." Word of the incident spread through the organization. Some saw it as weakness, Minwoo going soft. Others saw it as strategic brilliance, achieving objectives without unnecessary risk or cost. But Seo Yun, the young rival he'd partnered with, came to him with a different perspective. "That was impressive," she said. "You could have turned it into a war. Instead, you solved it quietly, protected the innocent, and still got your outcome. That's the kind of power that lasts. I'm learning that real power isn't about how much force you can apply," Minwoo replied. "It's about having the force but choosing not to use it, having options, and picking the right one, not just the easiest one. Who taught you that? He thought of Michelle, standing in a restaurant, risking everything to tell him the truth. Someone small but mighty. As autumn turned to winter, Minwoo's double life became more defined. By day, he was increasingly legitimate. Board meetings, investment strategies, legal business ventures. By night, he still managed the organization, but more as a consultant than a dictator. Tae-il and Seo-yun handled most operations while he focused on the transition plan. He'd started seeing a therapist, discreetly, under a false name, to deal with everything he'd been carrying for years. The therapist, an older woman who'd worked with trauma survivors, helped him understand that healing wasn't betraying his family's memory. "You survived," she told him. Survival was the first step. Now you get to choose what surviving means. Does it mean spending your life in the darkness that took them? Or does it mean building something that honors what they would have wanted for you? His mother had wanted him to be happy. His father had wanted him to be good. His sister had wanted him to be kind. He'd failed at all three for 15 years. But maybe it wasn't too late. The community centers expanded. The scholarship program grew. Quietly, carefully, he began redirecting resources toward things that actually helped people, rather than just consolidating power. And through it all, Thursday dinners with Michelle's family kept him grounded. They became his anchor, the one place where he could just be human. One Thursday in December, Grandmother Mallory pulled him aside after dinner. "I'm going home next month," she said. "Back to my country. Harley and Michelle will stay here. This is their home now. But I wanted to tell you something before I leave." "What's that?" "When I first learned what you were, what you'd done, I wanted to tell Harley to stay away from you, to protect my family from someone dangerous." She paused. "But Michelle insisted you were good inside, and I've watched you these months, seen you change. That's rare. Most people don't really change. They just pretend to. But you're doing the work, the hard, painful work of becoming someone different." "I'm trying. I know. And I want you to know that you're part of this family now. Not because of money or favors or obligation. Because we choose you. Remember that. When the darkness calls you back, you have people who care about the person you're becoming." Her words stayed with him through the holidays, through the quiet moments when the old urges whispered, when rivals made moves and his instinct was to crush them, when business deals went wrong and violence seemed like the clearest solution. In those moments, he thought about Thursday dinners, about Michelle's trust, about Grandmother Mallory's wisdom, about the choice he made every day to feed the light instead of the darkness. It wasn't always easy. Some days it felt impossible. But he kept trying. 2 years after an 8-year-old girl told him the truth about his wife, Minwoo stood in a very different place than where he'd started. The organization still existed, but it was almost unrecognizable. 70% of operations were now legitimate businesses. The remaining 30% was being carefully phased out, converted, or handed off to people who would run them more ethically. Tae-il had become the primary leader, with Seo-yun as his second. They ran things with a different philosophy, still tough when necessary, but preferring negotiation to violence, cooperation to conquest. Minwoo himself had stepped back to an advisory role. He still had influence, connections, the respect that came from years of power. But he wasn't the Ice Prince anymore. People had started calling him something else, the Bridge Builder. Someone who connected the criminal world to legitimate society, helping former criminals transition to legal work. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't come with the same rush of power. But it felt right in a way nothing else ever had. He'd sold the expensive penthouse, donated most of Myre's confiscated assets to charity. He lived modestly now, in that quiet apartment with no ghosts, worked reasonable hours, actually had hobbies. He'd discovered he enjoyed gardening, most of all things. Michelle was 10 now. thriving in a gifted program at one of the city's best schools. The trust fund he'd set up for her education was secure, managed by lawyers who'd ensure it was used properly, regardless of what happened to him. He still saw her family every Thursday, though Grandmother Mallory had returned home as promised. They video called with her monthly, and she always asked him pointed questions about whether he was staying on the right path. On this particular Thursday, Michelle seemed distracted during dinner. She kept glancing at him nervously, like she wanted to say something but couldn't figure out how. Finally, after helping with dishes, she pulled him aside. "Can we talk? Privately?" They went to the small balcony. Below, the city hummed with evening traffic. "What's wrong?" Minwoo asked. "Nothing's wrong exactly. It's just, I've been thinking." She fidgeted with her hands. "You know how you helped us? With money and education and everything?" "Yes." "And how you've been coming to dinner and being part of our family?" "Yes." "Well, I was wondering, why don't you have your own family? I mean, I know your wife was terrible and you got divorced, but don't you want to meet someone nice, have kids, do normal family stuff?" Minwoo was taken aback. "I haven't really thought about it." "Why not?" "Because I didn't think I deserved it, I suppose, after everything I've done." Michelle frowned. "That's dumb. I mean, not dumb, but if you're a different person now, shouldn't you get to have the life that person deserves? Not the life the old person deserved?" Out of the mouths of children. It's complicated. Everything's complicated if you think about it too much. She looked up at him seriously. "I just think you're lonely. And you don't have to be. There are good people in the world, people who would like you for who you are now. Maybe someday. Promise, because Mom says you work too much, and you need to live a little. And Grandmother Mallory said the same thing when I talked to her yesterday." He smiled despite himself. "You all talk about me behind my back?" "Not behind your back. You're part of the family. We talk about everyone. Last week we spent an hour discussing Mom's friend who keeps dating terrible guys. This week, it's your turn." The casualness of it struck him. Being discussed like normal people discussed each other. Not with fear or calculation, but with affection and concern. "I promise I'll think about it," he said. "But right now, I'm focused on building something that lasts. Something good." "Like what?" "Like a foundation. I'm planning to set one up officially. For education, community development, helping people transition out of difficult situations." Michelle's eyes lit up. "Really? That's amazing. Can I help?" "You're 10. So, I can still help. I could volunteer or help plan programs or something." Her enthusiasm was infectious. "Tell you what, when you're 16, if you still want to be involved, I'll bring you on as a youth advisor. You can help design programs for younger kids. Deal." She stuck out her hand, and they shook on it, serious as any business agreement. As they went back inside, Harley gave Minwoo a knowing look. "What were you two plotting?" "The future," Michelle announced. "I'm going to be a youth advisor for Mr. Minwoo's foundation." "In 6 years," Minwoo clarified, "when she's old enough." "Still counts?" Michelle grinned. "I'm going to start preparing now, learning about community development and program planning and everything." After dinner, as Minwoo prepared to leave, Harley walked him to the door. "She adores you," Harley said quietly. "You know that, right? The feeling is mutual. She's an extraordinary child. She sees you as proof that people can change. That doing bad things doesn't mean you're a bad person forever." Harley paused. "I see that too. When you first started coming around, I was scared. I knew enough about your reputation to be terrified. But you've been nothing but kind to us, generous, present. You gave me a gift," Minwoo said. "A chance to be part of something good. I'll always be grateful for that. Just promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll let yourself be happy. Really happy, not just less miserable. You've earned that." It was the second time that evening someone had told him he deserved happiness. Maybe they were right. The foundation launched 6 months later. The Haiwan Foundation, named for his sister. It focused on education, job training, and helping young people in difficult circumstances find better paths. Michelle attended the launch event, beaming with pride as Minwoo gave his speech. He'd prepared formal remarks, but at the last minute, he set aside his notes. 2 years ago, he said to the assembled crowd, a child taught me something important. She saw something wrong and spoke up about it, even though it was scary, and even though she had nothing to gain and could have gotten in trouble. She did it because it was right. He looked at Michelle in the audience. That moment changed my life. It showed me that courage isn't about power or violence or control. It's about doing what's right even when it costs you something. And I decided that if an 8-year-old could be that brave, maybe I could be brave enough to change. The speech went on, but that was the heart of it. The foundation's mission was built on that principle, giving people the courage and resources to choose different paths. In the months that followed, the foundation grew. They partnered with schools, community centers, job training programs, helped former gang members get legitimate employment, provided scholarships to kids from difficult backgrounds. Minwoo threw himself into the work with the same intensity he'd once applied to building his criminal empire. But this felt different. This built something that would outlast him, something his sister would have been proud of. Tai-il noticed the change. You seem lighter, he said one day. I feel lighter. Turns out carrying all that darkness is exhausting. Any regrets about stepping back from everything? Minwoo thought about it. Only that I didn't do it sooner. But I wasn't ready sooner. Sometimes, you need to go through the darkness to appreciate the light. On a Thursday evening 3 years after everything began, Minwoo arrived at Michelle's apartment for dinner to find a surprise. Grandmother Mallory had returned for a visit. She looked older, but still sharp-eyed, and she studied him with that measuring gaze he remembered. So, she said. The Ice Prince becomes a philanthropist. I had to see it myself. It's good to see you, Grandmother. Sit. Let me look at you properly. She circled him like she was examining a plant specimen. Your eyes are clearer. Less shadow there. You're sleeping better? Yes, actually. Good. Guilt and trauma show in the eyes. Can't hide it. But healing shows too. She nodded, satisfied. You've done the work. I'm proud of you. Those simple words hit harder than he expected. When was the last time anyone had said they were proud of him? His parents, maybe, before they died. No one since. Thank you, he managed. Over dinner, Grandmother Mallory told stories about Michelle's homeland, about traditions and healing practices passed down through generations. Minwoo found himself relaxed, laughing at her sharp observations about human nature. After the meal, she pulled him aside. I brought you something. She handed him a small cloth bag. Seeds for a garden. I've actually started gardening, he admitted. Small herb garden on my balcony. I know, Michelle told me. These are special, medicinal plants from my home. Some heal, some prevent illness, some just make good tea. Plant them with intention, care for them, and they'll remind you that growth takes time, that you can't rush healing, but with patience and attention, beautiful things emerge. He turned the bag over in his hands. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep choosing the light, even when it's hard, even when the darkness seems easier, because that's the real work, not the one-time big decision, but the 1,000 small decisions every day to be better than yesterday. I will. I promise. She patted his cheek with surprising gentleness. Good. Because my granddaughter believes in you, and I trust her judgment. Children see the truth of people before adults cloud it with complications. That night, as Minwoo walked home under streetlights, he thought about the journey he'd taken. From a traumatized teenager seeking power to protect himself, to a crime lord who almost died from his own paranoia, to whatever he was now. Still flawed, still carrying his past, but actively building something better. The seeds Grandmother Mallory had given him were in his pocket. He'd plant them this weekend, tend them carefully, watch them grow. Maybe that's all any of them were doing, planting seeds of better things, tending them with patience, and hoping they'd flourish. 5 years after Michelle had walked up to a dangerous man in a restaurant and told him a terrifying truth, Minwoo received an invitation to her middle school graduation. She was 13 now, already showing signs of the remarkable woman she'd become, still top of her class, still passionate about medicine and helping people, still impossibly brave. At the ceremony, she gave a speech as valedictorian. Minwoo sat with Harley, watching with pride as this young woman, stood before hundreds of people with complete confidence. "Everyone talks about following your dreams," Michelle said. "But I think it's more important to follow your purpose. Dreams are about what you want. Purpose is about what the world needs from you." She scanned the audience, her eyes finding Minwoo. Someone once told me that real courage is doing what's right even when it's scary, even when it costs you something. I've tried to live by that, and I've watched people around me live by it too. People who chose to change, to be better, to use their power for good instead of control. The speech continued, but Minwoo felt emotion tighten his throat, that she included him in her definition of courage after everything he'd been. After the ceremony, Michelle ran up to them, diploma in hand. "Did you like my speech?" "It was perfect," Harley said, hugging her tight. Michelle looked at Minwoo. "Did you know I was talking about you? The part about choosing to change?" "I suspected." "You're one of my heroes," she said simply. "I hope you know that." He couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, "You're one of mine too. You saved my life, Michelle. Not just by warning me about the poison, but by showing me there was a life worth saving. Thank you." She smiled, then turned as friends called her name. "I have to go take pictures. But you're still coming to the party at our place, right?" "Wouldn't miss it." As she ran off, Harley said quietly, "She means it, you know, about you being her hero. She wants to help people the way you helped us. I barely did anything. You did everything. You gave us security, opportunity, a future. But more than that, you showed us that people can choose to be better. That power can be used for good. That's worth more than any amount of money." The graduation party at their apartment was loud and full of Michelle's friends, their families, teachers. Minwoo felt out of place initially, but Michelle kept pulling him into conversations, introducing him as the person who runs the Haiwan Foundation. No mention of his past, just who he was now. One of Michelle's teachers, a young woman named Ji-yeon, struck up a conversation with him about the foundation's work. She was passionate about education equity, full of ideas about programs and partnerships. They talked for nearly an hour, and Minwoo found himself genuinely engaged. Not calculating or guarded, just present, enjoying the conversation. As he was leaving, Ji-yeon slipped him her card. "If you ever want to discuss potential school partnerships, please call me. I'd love to get my students involved in volunteering with the foundation." "I'll do that," he said, and meant it. Later, walking home, he thought about Michelle's earlier question. Didn't he want a normal life? Family? Happiness? Maybe. Maybe it was time to let himself want those things. The final piece of Minwoo's transformation came unexpectedly, as most important things do. He was at the foundation office, reviewing grant applications, when Tae-il called. "Boss, we have a situation. The last holdout operation, the one we've been trying to legitimize for 2 years? The one run by old guard who won't adapt? What about it? They're planning something. A last stand, they're calling it. Trying to pull us back into the old ways, prove that going legitimate is weakness. The old Minwoo would have crushed them immediately. The current Minwoo felt only sadness. "What do you need from me?" "Permission to handle it my way, which means giving them a choice. Join the new direction or leave the organization entirely, but peacefully. No violence, unless they force it." "You don't need my permission for that, Tae-il. You're the leader now. Trust your judgment." "I just wanted you to know, in case it goes wrong." "It won't. You're smarter than I ever was about this. You'll find the right solution." After hanging up, Minwoo sat in silence. This was it, the final letting go. The organization he'd built with blood and fear was now Tae-il's to reshape completely. He was truly just a consultant now, an advisor. The Ice Prince had melted away, and what was left was just a man trying to do better. That evening, he went to Michelle's apartment. It wasn't Thursday, but he needed the grounding their family provided. Harley was surprised but welcomed him in. "Is everything all right?" "Yes. I just needed to be around good people." They sat in the small living room, drinking tea. Michelle did homework at the table, occasionally asking questions about a science project. Normal, domestic, peaceful. "I've been thinking about what you said," Minwoo told Harley, "about letting myself be happy. And I think I'm ready to try. I called that teacher from Michelle's graduation party. Ji-yeon. We're meeting for coffee next week to discuss foundation partnerships." Harley's smile was knowing. "Just partnerships? That's how it's starting. We'll see where it goes." From the table, Michelle piped up. "Mom, Mr. Minwoo is trying to tell you he has a date and he's nervous." "I'm not nervous. You're totally nervous. You keep fidgeting with your watch." He looked down, realized she was right. "When did you get so observant?" "I've always been observant. That's literally how this whole thing started." She grinned. "But I'm happy for you. Ji-yeon seems nice. She talked to me at the party about how important education is. I think you'll like her." "I already do," he admitted. "That's what makes me nervous." "Good nervous? Or bad nervous?" Michelle asked. "Good nervous, I think. The kind that means something might actually matter." Harley reached over and squeezed his hand. "Then embrace it. You've earned the right to good things, Minwoo. Stop punishing yourself for who you used to be, and start celebrating who you've become." The coffee meeting with Ji-yeon turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a second date, then a third. She knew about his past. It was impossible to hide completely. But she cared more about his present and future. "Everyone has a history," she said over their fourth dinner. "Unlike what matters is whether you're learning from it or being controlled by it. You're learning. That's rare." 6 months later, they were officially dating. A year after that, she moved into his apartment. 2 years after that, he proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture. No expensive rings or dramatic displays. Just the two of them in his garden, among the medicinal plants Grandmother Mallory had given him, and a simple question. "Will you build a future with me?" She said yes. Michelle was 13 when they met, 16 when they married. She was Minwoo's youth advisor at the foundation by then, brilliant and passionate, and still impossibly brave. At the wedding, she gave a toast that made everyone cry. "When I was 8 years old," she said, "I did something scary. I told a powerful man a truth he needed to hear. I did it because my grandmother taught me that speaking up is important, even when you're afraid, especially when you're afraid." She looked at Minwoo and Ji-yeon. I couldn't have known then how much that one moment would change things, not just for him, but for all of us. It taught me that small acts of courage can ripple out in ways you never expect. That one person choosing to do the right thing can change someone's entire path. Her voice softened. "Mr. Minwoo, I probably should call you Uncle Minwoo now. You took that scary moment and turned it into something beautiful. You didn't just save yourself. You saved so many others through the foundation, through the choices you made, through becoming someone who builds instead of destroys." She raised her glass. "So here's to courage, to change, to second chances and new beginnings, and to the family we choose, which is just as important as the family we're born into. As everyone drank to the toast, Minwoo caught Harley's eye across the room. She mouthed, "Thank you." He mouthed back, "Thank you." Because they'd all saved each other, really. Michelle had saved him with her warning. He'd helped them with resources and support. But they'd all saved each other in the ways that mattered most, by choosing to see the good in each other, by offering second chances, by building something better together. 10 years after a little girl told him his wife was poisoning him, Minwoo stood in a hospital room, holding his newborn daughter. She was tiny, perfect, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that worked remarkably well. Ji-yeon slept in the bed, exhausted, but smiling. And Minwoo looked down at this small person who depended on him completely and felt something he'd never felt before. Pure, uncomplicated love. "Hello, Hae-won," he whispered. "I'm your father. I'm going to do everything I can to give you a good life, to be someone you can be proud of." The baby yawned, unconcerned with promises, just existing, pure and new, untouched by the darkness that had marked so much of his life. Michelle arrived at the hospital an hour later, now 20 and in her second year of pre-med. She'd gotten into the best medical school in the country with a full scholarship, partly from the foundation Minwoo had built, though that was meant to be secret. "Can I hold her?" Michelle asked, eyes wide with wonder. Minwoo carefully transferred the baby to her arms. "Michelle, meet Hae-won. Hae-won, this is Michelle. She's the reason you exist." "That's a bit dramatic," Michelle said, but she was smiling. "It's true. If you hadn't told me about Mireille, I wouldn't be here, wouldn't have changed my life, wouldn't have met Ji-yeon, wouldn't have had this beautiful daughter. Everything good in my life traces back to your courage that day." Michelle looked down at the baby, her expression soft. "Then I'm glad I was brave, because she's perfect." Later, after Michelle left and Ji-yeon woke up, they lay there together, a little family, new and fragile but real. "Tell me the story again," Ji-yeon said sleepily, "about how this all started." So Minwoo told her about the restaurant, the little girl with braided hair and serious eyes, about being blind, literally and figuratively, to the poison in his life, about choosing to change rather than take revenge, about Thursday dinners and medicinal plants and the slow, difficult work of becoming someone different. "You know what I think?" Ji-yeon said when he finished. "I think you were never really the Ice Prince. I think you were always someone capable of warmth and love and change. You just needed someone to believe in you first before you could believe in yourself." Maybe she was right. Or maybe people were more complex than simple labels, capable of both darkness and light, and what mattered was which one you chose to feed. He looked at his sleeping daughter, thought about Michelle out there pursuing her dreams of healing people, about the foundation helping hundreds of young people find better paths, about Tae-il and Seo-yun running a transformed organization that did more good than harm, and all because an 8-year-old girl had been brave enough to speak up. "Thank you," he whispered to Michelle, wherever she was, "for saving me, for believing I was worth saving." The baby stirred in his arms, making small sounds. Ji-yeon reached over to touch Hae-won's tiny hand. "What are you going to teach her?" she asked. Minwoo thought about it. Courage. Kindness. That power is nothing without purpose. That people can change if they're willing to do the work. That the smallest acts of bravery can change everything. Sounds perfect. Outside the hospital window, the city glittered in the darkness. The same city where he'd once ruled through fear, where he'd almost died from betrayal, where he'd learned to live instead of just survive. It was a different city now, or maybe he was different, and that changed how he saw everything. And either way, holding his daughter, With his wife beside him, Minwoo felt something he'd thought lost forever after his family died. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of survival, but the quiet, steady hope of someone who believed tomorrow could be better than today. Because if he could change, if the Ice Prince could melt and become human again, then anything was possible. All it took was one brave little girl, a truth that needed telling, and the choice to listen. Honestly, this story took me on such a journey, and I'm still thinking about little Michelle's courage. Subscribe and stick around, because I've got more heartwarming tales coming your way. And I'd absolutely love to hear in the comments what moment made you smile the biggest. You all make creating these stories so worth it, and reading your thoughts genuinely brightens my whole week.